This is Jordan Edwards, and this is the Business Jiu-Jitsu Podcast.
Good afternoon. I'm here today with Ben Levin. Ben, extremely excited to talk to you. We came together through a longtime family friend of mine, Brittany Mortarella, who's an associate of yours, and very, very grateful that she did. I love the Mortarella family, so shout out to the whole Mortarella clan, and I just love when the networks converge. So Brittany reached out to me because you are a businessman and a jiu-jitsu practitioner.
Indeed. Well, I'm super excited and flattered to be here. And grateful to meet you and that Brittany put us together, and excited to chat.
That's great. So Ben, take us back a little bit. You know, where you're from, where'd you grow up?
So I was born in New York City. I was born in Manhattan. Kind of not sure whether I remember it or have some implanted memories, but I moved out as a 3.5-year-old. My parents moved to a super small town in southwestern Massachusetts in the Berkshires for what was supposed to be a break from the hectic life that was New York City. And that was in 1976. So I was born in 72, and they moved out to Sheffield or Southfield, Mass when I was a 3.5-year-old, and they're still there. So the experiment turned into permanent. So I grew up on a dirt road a mile away from another house, which had a log cabin and a sawmill, and real remote, and ended up going away to school when I was pretty young, and went away to college and came back to the New York City area after I graduated college to pursue like a career in financial services, and have been in and around Manhattan my whole adult life. So I lived in the city proper for, I guess about 17 years, from 1994 to 2009, 16 years. And then I live in Westchester today.
That's great. I love Massachusetts. I spent a lot of time in Massachusetts in my life. I went to boarding school in Massachusetts, Cushing Academy in Ashburnham on the other side of the Berkshires.
Yep.
But I was a competitive ski racer, and so I spent a lot of time at Berkshire East Mountain in the Berkshires. As an adult now, I go and ski at Catamount every once in a while, near Great Barrington.
Yeah. So I grew up Butternut and Catamount. Catamount had night skiing, so you could go to Catamount, and Butternut was like where I learned. I didn't learn to ski as a super young kid, but in like my early teens, I learned how to ski at Butternut.
Yeah, and I used to play all those schools out there, Berkshire Academy and all the Southern New England schools and lacrosse and all the sports I grew up playing. So
yeah, I went to Taft, so I was
nice.
So I was in the same group.
Yeah, you're in that. Did you play sports growing up?
I did. I was never like an exceptional athlete. I played hockey. I pole vaulted and track. Early on in my high school career, I kind of oriented around fitness. There was a ex-boxer at Taft who trained kids off season, and I got reasonably into fitness, and that has been the part of athletics that persisted for me in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Taft had a mighty good hockey program. It competed with my school, Cushing. I was not a hockey player. Like I said, I was a skier. But Taft is a great school. Is that still part of your network? You still stay active there? And
a lot of my close friends were from high school. When you live with folks for 4 years, you end up real close. So I do stay pretty involved with a bunch of those folks. And Taft had great hockey, had great lacrosse, great women's hockey. And I still follow a bunch of it.
Yeah, I felt very fortunate to go to boarding school. I grew up in Long Island, New York. So, Brittany and I grew up just a few blocks away from each other. And I was one of the few kids from my neighborhood to go to boarding school, not for any issues. I just really wanted to ski.
Okay.
I was a ski racer. I raced for my college for Northeastern for a number of years. And when I went to boarding school, my world was opened up beyond the 5 towns in Long Island to see this whole world. My roommate was from Germany. My friends were from Saudi Arabia and China and Japan. It was in Turkey. I mean, everywhere. It was a really amazing experience for me. I think very misunderstood unless you were lucky enough to be in that world. But for me, it was probably like one of the most important parts of my life going to that school.
Yeah, same. It was a big eye opener for me. I grew up like right between Salisbury School and Berkshire and Hotchkiss. So I grew up playing sports, playing hockey at all those rinks. And so I had a lot of familiarity with it. My sister had gone by day to Hotchkiss and Berkshire, but I had a super positive experience with Taft, both academic and kind of cultural. It was a really warm school. I made really good friends, and I had an awesome experience. I think it depends a little bit. I've like younger or maturing kids now who are entering that age, and I think they'll probably stay at home, but a little bit on the kid. But for me, I learned a ton. I feel like for me walking into college felt very easy and manageable given just kind of the workload and the capacity you get taught to deal with in the prep school format.
Yeah, I agree. I was very well prepared for college from 4 years at boarding school. And actually, the way that I found out about boarding school and Cushing in general is that my best friend, Alexa Rad at the time, and her dad, she went to Hotchkiss, or Steph and Alexa Rad, but their dad went to another boarding school. I forget the name. Oh, Loomis Chaffee. And so that was like kind of like how I knew about it. And then ended up in that world. So that's pretty cool. So you graduate college and now you're in the working world. Where do you land when you finish?
So I graduated college in 1994, and I had started my collegiate career at Hamilton, which was a lot like a big prep school. And then I transferred to Harvard. And so I did my last 3 years there, and I got a political science or government, like pretty classic liberal arts undergrad. And I like notionally wanted to work in business. And in the mid 90s, I felt like, honestly, maybe 80 to 90% of my graduating class did investment banking, consulting, went like a doctor, lawyer, or a kind of a service route. I felt like I didn't have any real hard skills leaving college in terms of business skills. And so I felt like a banking program would be a really good training program and a good fit. So I did 2 years at Salomon Brothers in like a classic 2-year investment banking analyst program and their M&A group. And I sucked at that job when I got it. I didn't know anything about finance or accounting, and you work really long hours. So sucking at a job that you are doing a lot of is a tough fit. So kind of a rough entry to the workforce. And like many, many things in life, as I started to understand and get better at the job, it became a lot more rewarding and exciting. But I finished 2 years there. I didn't know what I wanted to do still. I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in my life. I applied to business school. I applied to Harvard Business School. I didn't get in. And I had developed, as I mentioned in high school, like this love of fitness, this desire to get in really good shape. And so I took about a year off after the Salomon program and was a personal trainer and competed as an amateur bodybuilder. And for me, just experimented with what was possible. And it was a really good experience, like made me miss finance. I ended up coming back and starting a private equity career, but incredibly valuable in doing this thing that I wasn't really genetically set up for and was outside of my comfort zone in a different world, and was a really positive experience and has, continued to affect me for most of my life. Because I look backwards and I never feel like I'm in very good shape because I was in reasonable shape when I was in my mid 20s. And because kind of the knowledge of how to eat and how to think about your body has been something that has stayed with me for most of my adult life.
Ben, you're going to confirm that we've never met before. So you know that I'm not kissing your ass when I'm about to say what I'm about to say. Now, a lot of people are going to listen to this on Spotify, so they're not going to see you unless you go on YouTube or something. I cannot believe that you are as old as you say that you are, that you graduated college in 84, because you look unbelievable. You don't look a day over in the 35 to 40 range.
53, my friend. So I'm very, very flattered. The hair is gray. I keep it short for a reason. I shaved it for a while. I'm growing it back, but very, very kind of you. In my younger years, I was always focused on being fit. In the last 10 or so years, I have actually focused a fair more on the things that are good for you, eating really clean, getting back to sleep, being a little kinder to my body. Jiu-jitsu is a hard thing on the body, so I try a lot of things to stay in reasonable condition.
Yeah. Before we get to jiu-jitsu, you said you finished and you went into Salomon Brothers. One of my favorite business stories from Snowball, the story of Warren Buffett, is the anecdote about Salomon Brothers. I wonder if, I don't remember when that was, but were you there in and around that time?
That was literally like the year before I got there. Warren Buffett had joined the board and invested. And Salomon in, I think, 1993, I joined in 94. Again, I was a super junior person, but you just observe what was going on. I think they lost $1 billion, which back then was a super big deal. They lost it trading, and I worked at the investment bank. And so they tried to standardize compensation across the bank and the trading operations, and a bunch of senior guys quit while I was there. So I didn't have obviously any interaction with Warren or any of that part of the business, but it was kind of in the environment. So yeah, that was the period.
I'll summarize the story and fill in the blank if you know anything about it. But essentially, the way I remember it was a single trader made a series of trades that a vice president or an executive tried to sweep under the rug when it was discovered that it was irregular. I'll be gentle. And then when it was discovered by the broader public, it killed the stock and almost brought down trust in the entire financial system. They had to stop trading. And then Warren Buffett, who was a board member, had to come in and take over running the company for a short time. And he basically disinfected by opening it up and bringing sunlight in. And they used it as a case study for crisis management and just kind of like doing the right thing. And that story always imprinted on me of just, if I fuck up, if I make a mistake, just own it, show it, and don't try to cover it up, because the cover up was significantly worse than the trading error. As it's
like I didn't actually know the derivation of the story. That sounds right, but I never knew exactly how it played out. But every Ponzi scheme and every huge scandal usually starts with like some sort of small, either well-intentioned or poorly intentioned thing that snowballs. And I have absolutely learned that thing over the long term, which is everybody, as you said, everybody fucks up. The sooner you can get ahead of it, the better off you are. The longer you try and hide it, or the awful thinking that you can kind of claw your way out, more bad behavior after bad behavior. If you, I've never really been involved in it, but I've seen a lot of it. It always turns out shitty.
Yeah. All right. So after you're done with Solomon Brothers, fitness sticks a part of your life. At which point do you start to end up in the career that you're in now? Maybe you could tell us a little about the company and the work that you do.
Yeah. So, I knew what private equity was when I worked at Solomon. They had a coverage group. They covered like some of the really big firms like KKR and Apollo. I didn't work in that group. I worked for a guy who said that it was a good career to pursue if you had an analytical skill set. And then I took a little bit of time off, but that stuck with me, and I wanted to try something that leveraged these analytical skills that I had. And so I honestly didn't know a lot about private equity, but it was like, the buy side's better than the sell side. You have a little more control over your destiny in your life. So I applied for private equity jobs, and I got a really quirky private equity job working for a single family office, like a wealthy family that had made money in commercial real estate and had started a private equity business. It started a couple of other business lines doing corporate investing, one of which was kind of a classic investing in lower middle market, rapid growth, industrial businesses. So they bought steel businesses and machining and packaging, and textile businesses. And I joined as a 25-year-old. I was the first like junior person that they hired on that team. So I was way out of my skill set. Like I was way above my pay grade. I didn't get managed a lot, which was really good for me because I was pretty headstrong as a young person, but I got a lot of responsibility. And so I had these complex things to figure out that I didn't really know how to do, and they were important. And it was this virtuous cycle of if I did good work and I figured a thing out, the people that I worked for would provide me accolades and say, this is great. This is exactly what we needed. And it really, as a 25-year-old, was like everything in my life changed, built around that cycle, which is I had been honestly a little more of a glass half empty and a little bit of a negative person, and would point out the things that weren't working as opposed to try and fix them. And that job over the first couple of years just changed everything about the way I thought about things. The bodybuilding helped. Like it was like I did this thing where I went off course. People thought I was a little nuts to do that in a career in finance, but I kind of got on stage and I placed and I did a thing I didn't think I was capable of doing, and that instilled a little bit of confidence. And then I got this job and I didn't take a vacation for 2 years and I became obsessed with it. And honestly, it's like 28 years later, and that kind of cycle has allowed me to move in a couple of different ways across the private equity ecosystem. So I worked for that family for about 4 years. Unfortunately for me at the time, like I'd worked my way up into a mid-level position, and then they took their real estate business public and kind of shut off the business I was in. So I was like a vice president at this family office, and I was out of a job. Then I got a job at a big software-focused private equity firm or reasonable size software-focused private equity firm called Insight Partners, where I started as an associate and I stayed for a little under 7 years and I made partner there. And then about 18 months after I made partner there, I left with 2 other folks to found the firm that I currently work at, which is a software growth equity firm. We invest in small to medium size, kind of $5 to $35 million privately owned software businesses, generally that have been founded, bootstrapped, run by their founders. So not kind of traditionally venture capitally financed, but it's been a little bit of a random walk. Like, we've got tons of young people in this organization, and I meet lots of people who had a very distinct plan of this is what I want to do and when I want to do it. And I think I caught a couple of lucky breaks from a timing perspective, and certain things gave me confidence over my early to mid career to say, oh, I think maybe I can do this on my own with a set of people. And it has been immensely rewarding, super challenging in lots of ways, but the working for yourself, starting something, very rewarding slice of at least my life so far.
Phenomenal. You said 2 things I really want to unpack there. The first thing that you said is the transition from you learning to become a glass half full person. So I'm interested to know how that happened. And I'm going to hold that thought for 1 second, because I would love if you could just start there's a lot of young aspiring business and entrepreneurs that listen to this podcast.
Yeah,
A lot of jiu-jitsu guys. Maybe you could give them a tiny education on what private equity is from your perspective, like what it is that you do, demystify it a little. I think people hear it all the time, but maybe you could demystify it. And then if we could remember to pivot back to that, I think that's such an important moment that many young people who listen to this reach out to me about that thing.
how to get positive. Yeah. So private equity is, in some ways epically complex. Like, there's very esoteric slices of private equity, and there's 1,000 different versions of it. But in the simplest kind of explanation, it's really just investing in the equity ownership of a private company. So in the public equity format, you're buying a listed stock, you're buying IBM or you're buying Apple, and those stocks trade on an exchange. And so anyone can buy those and anyone can sell those. In the private format, firms form generally with a thesis that they understand a certain type of business, a certain size business, and a certain geography. And then they'll raise a pool of capital. They'll raise $10 million or they'll raise $10 billion, and they will use that pool of capital to buy minority stakes or majority stakes or all of different types of businesses. And then they'll help those businesses operate with the goal of making money, with the goal of, if you buy 10% of a business or you buy 100% of a business, whatever valuation you buy that business at, over 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you want to increase that value, often through growth, and then sell that business, take that business public, recapitalize that business, lots of different ways to liquidate that asset. But it's like any other investment business where you're trying to find a category of business that you understand. In the private equity format, those are private businesses. And then you're trying to invest in, help, and ultimately exit or sell those businesses to make a profit. And the way private equity firms make money is they have management fees on the assets that they raise, and then they get a portion of the profit that they create for their investors. And their investors tend to be a combination of high net worth individuals and then institutional investors like foundations and endowments and state pension funds and insurance companies. People that are trying to create return on large pools of assets will invest across multiple asset classes: public stock, public debt, real assets like real estate or lumber, timber, and then what are called alternatives, which would be hedge funds and private equity assets. And generally, as you go down that spectrum, private equity and hedge funds are generally higher fee formats where there's a belief and a hope that they can create outsized returns. They can create good returns on capital.
So by way of example, I own a concrete business. I start here on Long Island and I ramp it up to $10 million in sales. And you approach me and I say, the business is 10 million. And you say you want to own 51% of it. So now you pay me $5,100,000 or whatever. And now I own 49% of my business and you own 51% of my business. And now we're business partners. Is that a good summary?
100%. Either you say, you know what, I don't want a control partner. I'll sell you 25% of my business, and you'll help me grow it. Maybe I'll take some liquidity. Maybe I'll actually put some cash on the balance sheet so I can do things that I couldn't without a partner. Or you say, hey, I've created a valuable asset. I want to de-risk, but I don't want to sell all of it. I want a partner that can help. So I'll sell you 51 or 65% of my business. And then hopefully we can take that business from being worth $10 million to being worth $50 million. And so you'll make $5 million when you do the transaction with a private equity firm, and then you'll maintain that 49% stake. And if it's worth 50, you'll make another $24.5 million.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a very interesting business for some aspiring business jiu-jitsu young people out there. I hope they're going to learn from you. So, all right. So let's revisit the second part of the question. I had the moment that you described when I was 28. I had a huge amount of success in my businesses early on. I used all my talent from boarding school and college and my collection of experiences from flipping omelets and moving furniture and being a bar mitzvah MC. And then all of a sudden I'm running this business for my family. And I just seemed to not be able to lose until I lost. And then all of a sudden everything's going wrong. And I was reading a book, Money by Tony Robbins. And he says, before I could teach you anything about money, I need to teach you about yourself. And I'm going to distill all of his lessons. He has a bunch where focus goes, energy flows and all this. But basically what I figured out was that I was being the asshole.
Yep.
So when you said that you were glass half empty person, and then this job, this private equity working for this wealthy family flipped your perspective. This book is what flipped my perspective. Like, do you remember what it was that flipped your perspective?
It's 5 or 7 different things. It's one of them was just like this addiction to feeling good about yourself, finding a thing that made you feel worthy, like literally cut against the certainly rampant insecurity that I had. Like, I'd gone to good schools and I'd gotten good jobs and I'd had a pretty overall successful life, but yeah, I think I was, probably still am, deeply insecure in lots of ways, like many humans. And during the bodybuilding, I was like, wow, this is a thing that people thought I was crazy. And I never thought I could make my body look this way. And I achieved that. So it felt very good. It felt very rewarding. I felt pleased. And then
why do you think it is, like, you're a successful guy, you went to Harvard, you run a private equity business, you're a bodybuilder, you do jiu-jitsu, you're telling people that you still feel insecure and that you felt insecure. Insecure people who haven't yet arrived, they just never seem to believe you. Like, why should someone believe you that you still feel insecure?
You got to come live in my brain for a day. I mean, I mostly focus on, and not, I've gotten a lot better at this as I've aged. Like, my internal voice to myself is nicer than it used to be, but like, I focus on the small number of things that aren't working, and I'm pretty obsessive on things that aren't going well. So going back to answer your actual question, like,
yeah,
I have a bunch of reasons which aren't, I won't go through in painstaking detail on a podcast, but as a young person, I was angry. I partied a bunch. I felt like the world wasn't giving me what I wanted, even though ostensibly, if you were to look, you might say I was having a reasonable measure of success by traditional measures, but I didn't feel great about things. And then that job, I have a very addictive personality. I got super addicted to that, and it was not all positive. Like, it was a crazy environment. There were some things that weren't perfect, but it was this thing that each day, each week started to make me feel like I was achieving and like I was a contributor. And so in that, as that kind of subroutine in my brain, which has imposter syndrome and was insecure, was rumbling, every day I'd get to offset that with doing a thing that validated it. And then I read a bunch of different books, mostly self-help books. I read a book called Flow, The Theory of Optimal Experience by a guy named Csikszentmihalyi, and he talks about why people get in the flow state. And it fascinated me. It's like they play tennis or they do financial modeling, and kind of the world and time melts away and you get in that flow state. And he threw beepers on people and he paged them all week long and asked them, how did they feel? And he found a really interesting thing. Like, most people think that on Sunday morning, or, if they're religious, if they go to service, when they have their free time, when they have nothing to do, that they're finally going to feel great because they earn this free time. It's almost universally when people feel the worst, because the brain generally without a stimulus goes to what's called like psychic entropy, bounces around, focuses on all the negative shit. Like when you're lying in bed awake at 2 a.m., generally you're not focusing on like everything that's going right in your life. You're focusing on the things that aren't. So I read that book and it affected me because it like helped me order my life a little bit by creating a goal and then creating a short-term goal. It's one of the reasons I think martial arts in general is very, very appealing. It's like there's a belt system, you're making progress, you have little goals and larger goals. It's very helpful at keeping you on track. But I read that book, and then that was in my mid-20s. Maybe in my later 20s, I read a book called The Power of Now and A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
Oh, yeah.
He's a spiritual guy, and he talks about ego management and like what that voice in your head is. It's like you got this voice that's saying positive or negative or comparing yourself to other people, and it's not really you. That's like your image of you, and the ability to see that and kind of work with that was transformational for me in terms of understanding like who I was or who I thought I was. So it has been a journey. Like that stuff started in my mid-20s. I'm in my mid-50s. I still spend a huge amount of time working on myself. I talk a ton about like the world will give you a lot of problems. There are a lot of external problems that almost every individual faces. One of, I think, many people, myself included, biggest battle is like managing my internal mindset, like trying to get my head straight, trying to manage my insecurities and anxieties and frustrations and anger. And I think like everything else in the world, that takes constant attention. And I've been super lucky. I actually have never read a Tony. Actually, that's not true. I have read half of one of Tony Robbins' books, but I've watched him and I've read a ton of self-help. And I think little kernels from a lot of that stuff has had massive impact. And I personally have always felt like as you get older, I think as a young person, you think things will get easier, and generally they actually get harder and more complicated. And so there's like a little bit of a cat and mouse game where I get better and better and better and better at managing myself, and the world gets harder and harder and harder. So it's like unclear if I'm making progress, but I keep trying.
The world is getting harder and more complicated. It's like John Danaher says, jiu-jitsu is so amazing because it's solving problems under pressure, except the other person is fighting back and they are also getting better. So jiu-jitsu is an incredible teacher in that way. Before we get onto jiu-jitsu, like what are you reading now? What do you learn? First of all, I love both of those books. Flow, I have to go revisit that book.
I haven't read it in like 15 years, but every once in a while I'll pick it up. It's awesome.
Yeah. Mostly because exactly what you talked about is exactly something that I struggle with even this past weekend. I've been on a 2-month tear. It's one of the probably 2 of the busiest business life months of my life. I'm a dad of 3. I'm running multiple businesses, and I get a Sunday to relax, and I lay down and I'm like, fuck, that's the worst. Why does this suck? This is supposed to be the best part.
But so many aspects of like maintaining really strong positive energy and mental health is like fighting natural inclination. Yeah. And that inclination is like, all I want to do is take a break. And I've never met there are very few. You listen to like Dana White talk about going on vacation. It always cracks me up. He's like 3 days on vacation and like, I got to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. 100%. It's going on vacation is an art. I try to help some of my executives on that art because I have some executives who they cannot disconnect. My CFO, he just left for vacation today and he is all over his Slack, it's like, just go chill. So what are you reading now? What's the book that's on the top of the pile?
Stoicism. About 5 years ago, one of my colleagues here got me a book called The Daily Stoic.
Sure. You mean this book?
I did. There we go. I have read that every day, every morning for probably 5 years. I've got another one called The Daily Dad, which you might have. I've got a 13-year-old and 9-year-old, and I read those every morning. I read a bunch of the other stuff that he's written on all the different components of Stoicism, managing your ego, and and all different components of it. I read a bunch of health and fitness stuff. I'm halfway through 20 books. Like I have a very bad habit of ordering a book that's intriguing and reading 30 pages and then never finishing it.
Not a bad habit. There's a whole principle in Japanese philosophy. It has a name of just collecting books for the joy of collecting books.
It's nice. I still like physical books.
Me
I'm
too.
most of the way through Outlive. Again, I'm in my mid-50s, so I've done a lot of this testing, and I think Peter Attia's got a pretty interesting view of how to age maybe a little bit more gracefully.
Yeah.
And then I listen to a bunch of books on. Generally, I listen to a lot of podcasts and a lot of books, and the areas of interest for me are almost always business, fitness, business slash fitness slash health, wellness, mental health, acuity, performance enhancement.
Have you made any investments into that space, into the
Yeah,
fitness and health space?
We invested in a software business that sold to fitness facilities, and that was like 10 years ago, and we did well. It was called Club Ready, and we sold it to another private equity firm. And we've looked a bunch. We invest in a business that is like a wellness business for mental health, but it hasn't been like a huge chunk. It's hard sometimes. I remember when I took time off and was a trainer, I thought it would be because I loved working out and I was super into fitness. I thought it would be like the most rewarding thing in the world. And it was a better hobby than it was a career. It was like, it took a little bit of the joy out of it. I love it. And
That's a frequent topic of conversation on this podcast with people who are in the business of jiu-jitsu, that you can't get into it because you think you're going to do jiu-jitsu all day. It's like, I've advised friends who left their careers to open a jiu-jitsu academy. I told them, you better fall in love with the kids program. You better fall in love with doing birthday parties and cleaning the mats, because you're not just going to train world champions and do jiu-jitsu all day. Like, that's very far down the line. So,
agree. Totally agree. It's a hard business.
Yeah, every business is a hard business, but don't go into it because you think you're just going to do jiu-jitsu all day or train all day and it's going to be the most amazing thing. Like, as soon as you go into business, you are in business and you have to do all the things. I was right before our podcast today. One of my roles is that I run a portfolio of commercial real estate. So I have shopping centers all over the country. Okay. And I just put in a Kung Fu Academy in Pennsylvania, and the guy has a full-time job, well-paying, and his passion is Kung Fu. And he teaches classes at night, and this is his first business. He must be in his mid-50s also. And let me tell you something. He's learning the lesson of an entrepreneur because he's setting up his energy accounts and his water meter, and he can't understand the levels of bureaucracy that he has to deal with to do these simple things that most people just take for granted. And I told him, that's what being an entrepreneur is. You just got to go through the minutia, navigate the bureaucracy, and solve these little problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really interesting. All right. So here we are. How did you get into jiu-jitsu? When did you get into jiu-jitsu?
So I was like a kid that watched Kung Fu movies and watched, martial arts movies. And so I was always vaguely intrigued by martial arts. I'm 150 pounds. I'm small. So I was always focused on like the, ability to have more capability than my maybe physical stature. I started taking Shotokan karate in college. And then I took both places I went, both in Boston and in upstate New York, and then it lapsed. And then in 2009, I walked into I started to watch the UFC in 2005, 6, 7. I started to watch jiu-jitsu. And I was curious, and I walked into a program in New York City in 2009, and I took jiu-jitsu for 3 or 4 months, and I got injured. And then I moved out of the city and started a family, and I started jiu-jitsu again in 2012, and I did it for 3 or 4 months, and I got injured and I stopped. And I had a couple of other orthopedic issues from, just general fitness. And then in 2016, I run into the guys who worked out at the gym where I had trained in Westchester doing, fitness runs and things. And they'd always say, when are you coming back? And in 2016, I went back and said, you know what, come hell or high water, I'm going to see if I can get a blue belt. Halfway through, I got surgery. I had a thing I had to get surgery on, and I came right back and I got a blue belt in 2018. Then, COVID, I took a couple of years not really doing it. And the gym that I went to, which was close to where I live, kind of reestablished farther away. And I started going back in 2022, and I've been semi-regular. Like, I get there, I don't get there as much as I could or should. But I've basically been mostly on since 2016 with the COVID break.
That's phenomenal. You're blue belt today?
Just got a purple belt about 2 months ago.
Phenomenal. When I got my blue belt, I've been training since 2009. When I got my blue belt, Luke Como, who was in the UFC, happened to be there that night. For every once in a while, this guy dropped into the gym. I don't know if you remember Luke Como. He was on the Ultimate Fighter show. He fought in the UFC for many years, and he lived in our area. And he would drop into our gym. And the night I got my blue belt, he said to me, "How does it feel to know that now you could beat up almost anybody in the world?" That's what he said to me. I was like, "I don't exactly feel that way, Luke." But the principle is that, earning your blue belt in jiu-jitsu, even though on the jiu-jitsu scale, it feels like a low accomplishment.
Yeah.
On the global scale, compared to the average pedestrian, it's a superpower. I mean, it's a real superpower.
I had the most both times I've gotten, when I got my blue belt and when I got my purple belt. I got my blue belt and I drove home and I sat in my driveway in my car for about 20 minutes because I was so happy and so proud of myself in a way that I don't often experience, that I almost didn't want to tell anybody else or share it with anybody else. It was a really cool feeling, and I felt the same way. There's something about how hard it is in general and how hard it has been for me to make progress, that is very unique. I love the culture inside of certainly every jiu-jitsu gym I've been to. I haven't been to a lot, but where I go, there's an awesome culture and people are really happy for you. There's just it's a very powerful thing. And so, yeah, I almost, there's a small number of things in my life that I remember in the way that I remember getting the blue belt, because it's a thing I thought about for years. I quit a couple of times and then I finally got it, and it was super rewarding.
Yeah. It's pretty incredible that you've had those start and stops and have been able to get to this point and earn your purple belt and stay consistent since 16. What kind of lessons has jiu-jitsu specifically taught you about business?
I think it's been super interesting. I was thinking about this a little before we did this, and a host of things. The most poignant, the most obvious is just how humbling it is. I've had so many experiences where, I don't know, you think you're going to do pretty well against someone, or someone new comes to the gym, or there's a young person who's coming up, and this is just humbling in a really positive way. I've been lucky in aspects of my life where I've had success, and I think there's a mixed reaction to that. Some of it's great and you feel confident. Some of it's you feel maybe a little too good about yourself, and your ego starts to move in a certain direction. And there is something uniquely humbling about getting on the mats and having someone smash you and kind of learning your place in that ecosystem. And I love how different everybody is in that room, but there's this unique commonality. So I think it's humbled me in a lot of ways. I think it's taught me that, like most things, showing up is a lot. I'm not the most talented person in the world in anything that I do, and that's not me being humble. That's a fact. But I show up. I don't show up as much at jiu-jitsu as I could or should, but in work, I show up. I show up every day, and I really feel like I've watched a ton of UFC. There are amazingly talented people that can do things somewhat effortlessly in the world. The people that I find the most inspirational and aspirational are the people that have a lot of heart and just keep showing up.
Yeah.
And so it's taught me that, to keep showing up. It's taught me, every time someone gets a belt in my academy, the professor talks a lot about Jim or Jane's getting their belt, but the academy's getting promoted. This is something.
I love that. I never heard that, not once. That's a great way of thinking about it.
And he says, don't, because some people, sometimes you're upset that you're not making progress. He's like, everybody here is getting this belt. Nobody makes progress without everybody here. And I say it every time I say it often when people get promoted where I work, which is, yes, Jim or Jane or Sarah or got promoted, but we all got promoted. This is a thing that's evidencing all of our growth. So it's taught me that. It's taught me to manage anxiety, honestly. Being in bad positions is uncomfortable, and the best thing, certainly, listen, I'm 150, 145 pounds, and I end up on the bottom a lot, and I end up trying to calm down and see if I can weather storms. And that helps me a lot when I'm anxious in a presentation or there's something that's challenging. It's taught me to process data. Like there's a bunch of data you get when you're rolling with someone, and you can do things with that data if you don't freak out. And it's the same in business. And it's like back to the flow. It's like everything's one step in front of the other. Like most things are amalgamations of lots of practice and lots of exposure. And my experience, and again, I think it's very different for different people at different skill levels. But my experience, and I think the thing that has always kept me coming back to jiu-jitsu is all the things that we've talked about. But I'll throw out a ratio. It's like 1 in 100 minutes, I feel like I actually understand anything. Like 1 in 100 minutes of rolling or doing jiu-jitsu, I'll get a small, even if I don't submit somebody, I'll get a small thing that I've been working on or has finally absorbed. And it makes the 99 minutes where you feel like, oh my God, should I really be here? Am I really good at this? Worth it? And my experience in work is not the exact same ratio, but it's very similar. It's like the way society works and the way Instagram works and the way life works is everybody's just trying to get the 1 minute. And it's just not the way life works. And it just isn't. It's like, you said it 5 minutes ago, like figuring out how to get the electricity working, figuring it out, like, that is the stuff that makes small businesses work. And if you're only addicted to when you have a great sales day, it's not going to be an easy life for you. So kind of embracing the grind. I like to grind. I like to grind at work. I always have. And I find it very rewarding to go through that. And those, whether it's 1 minute every 100 or 1 minute every 200 or 1 minute every 50, those things kind of keep me going. So a lot of those things. And then just the final piece is just sticking with stuff. Like, there's tons of awesome expressions of black belts, a white belt that just kept showing up. Like, I think in lots of things, it really is like the war of attrition is a real thing. Like never going to get anywhere in life if you give up. You just not.
Yeah. Well, the last words of my book, Business Jiu-Jitsu, because this podcast was formed to write a book, which has been published, is show up, follow up, don't give up. That's it. I mean, like if I could synthesize my entire experience of talking to the best of the best in the jiu-jitsu community, from the best coaches, world-class athletes, billion-dollar CEOs, Navy SEALs, and on and on and on, it's what you just said: show up, follow up, don't give up. Like that's it. That's distill the whole book for people.
Yeah, layer in a very positive attitude, and a huge amount of things are able to be accomplished. And I go back to what we started with, which is like at some point in the line, I vaguely flipped from being by and large glass half empty to by and large glass half full. And I have made steady progress on that over 35 years. Like I am generally, and that's a choice that you can underline in lots of ways by surrounding yourself with people that are like that. And, like there's people everybody knows they want to be around, where you're around someone and you leave and you're energized and your physical disposition is different. And everybody's got a friend where you leave lunch or you leave a conversation and you feel like you lost bone marrow. It's like they're negative people, and it's tough. Like those relationships are very hard, I find.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we round out this conversation, I have one final question for you here. It's more of a business question. It was one that I thought about asking you because of the nature of what you do. And it's also something that I've been thinking a lot about in my own business and my own investing. So it's a little bit of a nuanced question, maybe a purple belt question, or maybe even a black belt question. But you invest in businesses for a living. You have to spot talent. You have to see commonality. You have to try to avoid repeat mistakes. So, you've made investments, I'm sure, that didn't pan out the way that you wanted. What are some of the things now, after many years of being in this industry, that you seek out when you're investing in someone else?
So I think there's like the business piece, which is there's 1,000 different ways. We invest in software businesses, and there's a bunch of different specific things that you look for. But by and large, like for the vast majority of businesses, what is the problem that you're solving? And how are you advantaged, differentiated, or maybe even unique in your ability to solve that problem? Like, that is the functional foundation of all. I mean, people have success without nailing that, and there's flash in the pan success, and there's people that are amazing at marketing shitty products, but by and large, the persistent successful businesses, whether they're services, software, consumer products, they're solving a problem and they're doing it in a somewhat unique way. Like, the most compelling businesses in the world are solving big, growing problems in unique ways. And then there's the personal overlay. Like, who is the person that you're investing in? And are they smart? Are they ethical? Are they fun to be around? Are they inspirational? Are they dynamic? Like, if you go and sell a bit, like, I'll use the software analogy. If you go and sell a software business, generally 50, 60% of the price can be explained by metrics, its growth rate, its profitability. The other half is everything else. And that everything else is often really underlined by people. You've met people that can captivate attention and tell a story and are authentic. And so the final piece would be alignment. Like, is the person you're investing in, do they want something that aligns with what you want? If you invest in the concrete business and your only goal in life is to take that business public, and the founder's only goal in life is to get it to $50 million in revenues and sell it for $100 million, you're going to have a bad experience. It's like very hard to get into business with someone or a personal relationship with someone if you want fundamentally different things. It's super easy to overlook any of those three if there's very strong confirmation bias on one. So if it's an amazing business with amazing business prospects and they're solving a serious problem, but you don't like the founder, or you don't get along with the founder, or they want a different thing, it's easy to overlook because you really fundamentally want to get into a great business. And likewise, if you find someone that you think is compelling and you're very aligned with, it's maybe easy to overlook the other piece. But those three things, like, what's the business problem that's getting solved? Who are the people doing it? And then in the construct of the transaction that you're doing, do you want a similar outcome over a similar time frame? Because there's lots of examples of people that have been very right about things or wanted things to similar things to occur, but had really different sets of kind of time frames.
Ben, you just gave a master class in just shy of an hour over here. I'm so grateful for the conversation. I really hope you'll come back on the Business Jiu-Jitsu podcast again and share more. I'm positive that there's a lot of, especially young and early career people out there who could benefit from your knowledge tremendously. So I don't know how much teaching or podcasting or writing that you do, but I hope it's a lot, because you have a lot to teach. I mean, you just gave me an absolute gem. A gem. So Daniel Cormier has this thing he calls the rub. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
It's when something good rubs off on you. Something to offer you, he calls it the rub. He's like, if he meets a marathon runner, he's like, he wants to ask him all these questions because he wants it to rub off on him.
It's the best.
You just gave a private equity fundamental business masterclass. I don't even think you realize how good it was.
You're very kind.
No, dude, I do this all the time. I'm telling you right now, I'm so grateful. And my favorite thing that you said about your academy and your professor that you brought over to your academy, to your company, is that when one of us gets promoted, the company gets promoted, the academy gets promoted. I've never heard that, but I love it. That's coming with me forever.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, listen, right back at you. This is a super cool thing. I'm always super flattered when anybody will listen to me talk. Thank you for having me on. It would be an honor and a privilege to come back. If there's anything I can ever do to help you personally, let me know. And again, just really appreciated the conversation. It was super fun to talk to you.
Yeah, you too, Ben. Please stay in touch. I will. And I would definitely encourage you to come back on again in a couple of months and share anything you're working on or anything you think the audience in the business and jiu-jitsu world might benefit from.